All right, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our first event for the 2022-2024 cohort of HASTAC Scholars. This is a large cohort. We have about 90 scholars in this cohort. Really happy to see so many of y'all were able to make it today for this orientation. My name is Sean. Once again, I'm one of the co-directors of HASTAC Scholars. HASTAC is the world's first academic social media platform. We have over 18,000 members. HASTAC stands for, HASTAC is a network of scholars who work around the humanities, arts, sciences. I can't remember the exact acronym right now. Apologies, Kathy. And we're really excited to welcome you to HASTAC Scholars, which is really the lifeblood of HASTAC. Hillary and I, over the course of today, will talk a little bit about our programs, but something that we're really excited is that this is the first cohort that will be on Humanities Commons. We just migrated our website to a new server, Humanities Commons, which I think will offer a lot of new and helpful ways for people to connect with each other through this work. But we'll also be learning with each other. So we'll also have Zoe and Larissa from Humanities Commons as part of our agenda today to kind of talk through a little bit about what our programming will look like on the new Humanities Commons server. Before I go any further, let me pass it to my co-director, Hillary, to introduce herself a little bit.
Yes, hi everyone. Again, I'm Hillary, HASTAC Scholars co-director. And I guess I'll just say two things. So from here, we're going to go over some of the ways to get involved in existing HASTAC Scholars programming. And then Zoe and Larissa are going to talk more about some of the key features of HASTAC Commons and how to sort of navigate it and connect with other people through it. And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please post them in the chat. We have a couple people keeping track of the questions in the chat. So you'll have an opportunity to get some of those questions answered at the end. So with that, any other announcements, or I can go into ways to get involved? Okay. So the first thing I'll talk about is the collaborative book review. The collaborative book review is one of a few existing ways for you all to sort of engage with each other in a more, I guess, structured way. And it basically entails reading and reviewing a book together over the course of the spring semester. For me, there are three sort of benefits to participating in the collaborative book review. One is to practice writing through the book review genre. Another is to practice giving and receiving feedback in a really supportive environment. And then the third is that you actually get to produce a final work for publication. So it'll definitely be published on HASTAC Commons, which Zoe and Larissa can talk about more. But you may want to turn your book review into something that you want to publish through a journal. So a lot of benefits to participating in that. Typically over the semester, the schedule is asynchronous, but we can also schedule, reading groups, sort of virtual meetups to talk about our reviews and that kind of thing. So this year, our featured book is The New College Classroom, which was co-authored by Kathy Davidson, one of the co-founders of HASTAC, and her colleague, Christina Katapodis. And it's basically a how-to guide for creating more participatory classrooms and giving our students more independence and more sort of active learning experiences. So that's the book we're going to be focusing on. And then I'll just throw a link in the chat to last year's collaborative book review, which featured which featured Design Justice by Sasha Costanza-Chalk. And if you follow this link, you'll see all of the different reviews that the participants published and an interview with the author, which you'll also have the opportunity to do. So that's the collaborative book review. I can answer any questions about it at the end, but I'm going to throw it to Sean to talk about a couple of our other programs.
Thanks so much, Hillary. I saw a couple of folks taking notes while Hillary was presenting on the collaborative book review, and by all means take notes, but I also want to reassure everybody that we're going to be sending a recap describing what the programs are and also giving links to sign up. So just to offer that in case, to offer some spaciousness in case folks are feeling worried about getting all this information down. We're going to be sharing both the recap and this recording and with all the links and everything. So the collaborative book review is one of three main programs that we have, three main active programs that we have for our scholars. The other two are Scholar Spotlight and Digital Fridays. So I'll talk about Scholar Spotlight a little bit first. The way that Scholar Spotlight has worked is that we invite people to sign up to have themselves and their work spotlighted on our site and our social media. So what that means is that we'll send out a list of boilerplate questions that just kind of give scholars an opportunity to introduce themselves, what their research interests are, what they're currently working on, what is motivating them in this work, what brought them to HASTAC Scholars. And we feature your work, we'll spotlight your work on the site and then also feature on our social media platforms. I think that this is really helpful overall in terms of building your social media footprint. But I think especially if you have like presentations or job talks or something coming up that you might want to look to be spotlighted, if you're interested in a Scholar Spotlight, that to strategically try to plan for the Scholar Spotlight in a time that's helpful for you too. So the spots are pretty limited, but we try to be pretty flexible with the way that it can work for you. So if folks are interested, we'll be sending out more information on that in this recap as well. And I can answer more questions about that later in this program too. The third program that we offer is Digital Fridays. Folks might have participated or been an attendee in a past HASTAC Scholars Digital Friday, but essentially what it is, it's a digital webinar series that is led by our scholars, which means that if you have a talk or a paper that you're working on presenting, that Digital Fridays would be an excellent opportunity for you to sign up and lead a Digital Fridays event. We are looking at different formats right now. So Digital Fridays in the past have been either single focus, meaning that there's one scholar who is leading the entire session and giving a kind of longer presentation and focusing specifically on their work. We've also experimented with some lightning round Digital Friday presentations in which we might have 2 or 3 scholars presenting shorter presentations. It's a really excellent opportunity to practice in a low stakes environment of your peers, something that you might be working on for a conference or something that you're working on to present to your committee for a job talk or anything like that. If there are questions about that, I'm happy to talk more about that later on in our program as well. And like I said before, we'll be sending the link to sign up for folks who are interested in that too. With that, I will pass it back to Hillary to talk about the HASTAC Scholars Group.
Yeah, so we're going to pass it off to Zoe and Larissa in just a minute. But before I do that, so we created a group for HASTAC Scholars, both past and current HASTAC Scholars on HASTAC Commons. And I started a discussion thread to just welcome everyone to the group. And I would also invite and encourage you to join the group and post a brief introduction of yourself there. It's going to be a place where we can share resources, start discussions around things that you're thinking about, grappling with in your own work. So please join that. And then, my colleague just put the link to the HASTAC conference, which is coming up this summer. So that the link to that is in the chat. It's happening this June, early June. I think it's the 2nd through the 8th or the 8th through the 12th. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but it's going to be hybrid. The in-person activity is going to be in Brooklyn, based at Pratt University. And the theme is critical making and social justice. So they're no longer taking submissions right now, but there will be opportunities for all of you to volunteer, both in the time leading up to the conference and participating in the conference. So we'll be sending out more information as the date approaches. Okay, so now we're going to pass it off to Larissa and Zoe to tell us all about HASTAC Commons.
Thanks, Hillary, and hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you today. So you've caught some hints there in Sean and Hillary's introductions about our place here, Larissa and I. So we work with Humanities Commons, which you may have come across before, and we have partnered with HASTAC to set up HASTAC Commons, which is a space that is for you to make of it what you will, to do this community building work that you're doing together as scholars, to leverage it for your own professional online presence, lots of things like that. So today, Larissa is going to take you through the platform itself and show you bits and pieces if you're not familiar with it, and maybe some bits that you haven't seen before. But I wanted to start by kind of talking about why we've done this. So like I say, our relationship here is a partnership because we, along with HASTAC, believe in a way of doing the work that you do and a way of understanding the potential of what you will do as researchers and educators that has a lot more possibility than is typically available in very traditional closed structures. And so we work very broadly with several different societies and institutions to kind of develop a network where our work can be shared, find its audiences, and we can kind of make a bit of noise and do things a little differently around here, essentially. So I'm going to kind of go over why we talk about ourselves as the Commons, why that's the model that we've sort of taken here. So let me just pop some slides up, some aggressively pink slides. Thumbs up if I could get if the slides are showing all right. Excellent, thank you. So if you're not familiar with, or you haven't encountered for a while, the idea of a commons is it's a model for being in exchange with others, with this idea of an asset or a wealth that we are managing together as well. But a few critical things are, this is a social system. So having a commons is also about doing the act of commoning. And so it's about that stewardship of resources and very much built in as shared values and community identity, which, as I say, is something that's kind of brought our organizations together. It's really about self-organization. So this is where you will have a place to help organize this space. And it's really about our responsibility to be passing on the resources that we both inherit from those who've gone before us. So for example, the scholars cohorts that have come before you, and you have something really important to contribute to the ones who will come after you. So this, again, idea of stewardship. And, you know, we have an opportunity within the Commons to exchange value in different ways. This is not about paying for resources, paying for time, those sorts of things. These are different value exchange that takes place, which is often not our opportunity, and particularly in online spaces. I'm sure you all are familiar with some recent events at Twitter. If you're not, I envy you. Those are the kinds of things that really influence how we are able to be in community in online spaces, and we're kind of creating room for different ways of doing so. Well, So for HASTAC Commons in particular, like I say, this is a place for you to develop your social systems and stewardship of the resources that you're creating together, like this book review, for example, the collaborative book review. It's a really wonderful example. And so what we provide is the infrastructure to do that, and for you to be able to grow the collection of assets that you have, and do this work of interacting differently outside of kind of typical market conditions, shall we say. So that's fairly lofty abstract, what this looks like for you in the real time. And this is some of the things that Larissa is going to be showing you, is you have a space here on HASTAC Commons where you can develop and maintain your digital presence as a scholar. That's really growing in importance. Everybody has a digital presence. It's just a question of whether you're coordinating it and managing it. This is a place to do so. You can be collaborating both on the HASTAC Scholars programming, which Sean and Hilary have spoken about, and also you can find other things that you want to work with others on, and you know, all sorts of sparks can happen when you have this space. So you're also contributing to the knowledge commons, of course, participating in that stewardship, and the tools that are available on HASTAC Commons are for you to explore and do whatever you like with. That's one of the exciting parts of this, is that, you know, there is a base infrastructure which will go through what the pieces of that are, but the possibilities are endless with what you can do with these. And in our role as your partners in this, we're listening to what you need. The Commons is always growing and developing. We have some big projects underway, which there'll be opportunities to give feedback on. We're going to be doing some focus groups, a user survey, things like that. And we want to be in this with you. We are in this with you in terms of creating and shepherding the Commons in a really responsible way. And also, we are not here to extract value from the work that you do. The value is the work that you do. We're not here to sell your attention or your data ever. The way that we're funded is through our partnerships like with HASTAC, and we have substantial grant funding and a few other gift kind of incomes, but we are not selling any of the data, any of the anything that is generated through your work. So that's just a little reassurance as well of how we approach things. So with that, I'll hand over to Larissa to take you through some of the specifics of what you can do on HASTAC Commons.
Awesome, thanks, Zoe. So as Zoe mentioned, one of the things that you can do on HASTAC Commons is establish your digital presence. And you all, as being the first group of scholars that are really on the Commons, are, as Zoe also mentioned, really building the Commons for how you want it. And in that way, you're going to be establishing your own digital presence. What I'm going to show you now, as I kind of take you through the various areas of the site, are some different ways that you can establish that presence in many different ways. So one of the things that's great about our platform is there are many different ways that you can get your work out there. And you can also represent who you are in whatever you feel like that could look like for you. So I am now going to share my screen. So give me 1 second to get myself situated. Okay. All right. You should all now be able to see my screen. Can I just get a thumbs up from someone? All right, great. Thank you. So if you have not already gone to haystack.hcommons.org, this is what you will see. If you're on the site for the first time, you will need to register, and you'll just follow the steps for that process. Once you have registered, then you can log in, and I'm going to do that right now so you see what that looks like. We have a number of different methods for logging in, and once you do, you'll return back to the home page. So the first thing once you are on HASTAC that you will want to do is create and build out your profile. And so you can see I have my name up here, and when I click on that, this will take me to my profile page. So this is essentially like any other site where you would be building a profile. This is kind of your overview of who you are and who you are as a scholar and what sorts of information you want people on the Commons to know about you. So you can see that I've added some of my social media handles here. You can add a bio, you can describe your education. Other things that you can add information to are projects. You can talk about your other memberships and society memberships and whatnot. As you work on the Commons more, some of these areas will also populate with the things that you publish, which is pretty exciting. So for example, when you share things in our core repository, those will show up. When you join groups, they will show up here as well. And I'm actually going to go and find another profile to show you how, as you're working more on HASTAC Commons, your blog posts will also show up on your profile. So I'm going to scroll down here and let's see. I think that the one I was looking for is moved to the other page. There we go. So I'm just going to go to Bonnie's for the moment. So if you go to anyone's profile, you can see what they've added. And then if they've written blog posts anywhere on the Commons, those will also show up as well. So part of your profile will be you making the decision of what you want to add. And then also you can, it will automatically populate as you use the Commons more. So then let's now go back to the homepage, and I want to show you how you'll be able to write a blog post. So on the Commons, we use WordPress, and you have the ability as a HASTAC Commons user to create WordPress sites. And also, as you're working here, you'll be using WordPress's tools. So for example, for something like a collaborative book review, or if you just want to publish something on any of the theme sites, what you'll do is you'll click on the theme site that you want to update. And then this will take you to that site, clearly. And then from there, there will be a button that will say write a post. And when you click on that, that will take you into the WordPress text editor where you can write your blog post. You can add in any images and whatever you need to do. And then once you're done and you click publish, then that will end up on the site itself. So I know that's pretty straightforward. Basically, it's just like any other blogging platform in that way. If you click on discuss this topic from one of these sites, it will actually take you into the groups area for the theme sites. And I will talk about that more in a minute. But basically, as I said, you can very quickly write your posts from going from that homepage. And then from there, those blog posts that you write on the theme sites will appear on your profile. So then for groups, so I'm just going to use this one as the example since I'm here. The idea for groups are a little bit more of small group collaboration as opposed to being open to everybody. So if we look at just any group on the Commons, if you go to the activity area, you will be able to see what members of the group have written. If they have posted on one of those sites, you can see the posts here. This will automatically update. And also if the group is a public group, you can also post updates directly to the group. The main thing that you're going to want to know about groups is the discussion board area. And Hillary mentioned this a little earlier in the HASTAC Scholars group, in that this runs basically like a typical discussion board. And so topics are created, and then from the topics, you can post replies and whatnot. So the other thing, and I'm going to go to a different group to show you this. The other thing that you can do is you can actually add deposits into our core repository directly into a group. So I'm going to use the jobs and opportunities group as the example. So if you'll see on the list of options and groups a from core option, and it doesn't look like we have any here yet, but as users begin to deposit things into our core repository, they will automatically go into the groups that they choose. So if let's say you have a group on art history and you've written an art history paper and you want to share it with people who are also in that group, you can upload it to the repository and tag the group, and then it will show up in this from core area and then also in the activity area. So that's another great way that you can have that interactivity with getting your work shared with people that have the same interests. One final note I want to make about groups is that there are different kinds of groups on the Commons. And so there are public groups, which means that anybody can see that. So Jobs and Opportunities, for example, is a public group. Anyone can go in and make changes and edit it. Then there are also private groups, like the HASTAC Scholars Group. So if you want to join that group, or you're required to join that group, then you should have a request membership button that you will click on, and then that will send a note to the group admins to let you into the group. The other thing I do want to note is just make sure that before you are trying to get into a group, that you make sure you have registered for the Commons. If you have not, there will not be a button here that says request membership. So make sure that your registration has gone through, and then you should be able to join your group. So then the last section of the Commons I want to talk about is our core repository, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. So our core repository on the Commons is our open access repository, where you can add your work in order to make it more shareable and make it part of that Commons community of available knowledge. So all you have to do to add something to the core repository is go to the core page and then upload your work. So once you get here, you can select which file you'd like to upload. We support many different file types, and I will put some links in the chat after I'm done talking, where you can read about what you can upload and the different formats. But if you have a syllabus that you want to upload, a conference presentation, slides from a PowerPoint, we do support even video files. Essentially, anything that falls within the very loose term of scholarly work can go into the core repository. And so once you select the file and you upload it here, then you'll just need to fill out this form that will be the metadata for that deposit. So a lot of these are very straightforward. Your title, you'll want to select what kind of file it is, or I'm sorry, what kind of item it is. You can add a description and an abstract. You can add additional collaborators beyond yourself if it's something that was a collaborative piece. As I mentioned, you can add groups to that deposit. So let's say I've created a syllabus on teaching and learning, and there's a teaching and learning group that I want to share it with, I can add that group here. You can choose subject headings for that deposit so that it will be categorized with others that are similar. And then if there is not a subject heading for what you wrote about, you can add tags that will also serve as another form of organizing things. Beyond that, all of this, as I said, is very straightforward. The final thing that you'll need to choose is a Creative Commons license. And if you are not sure which license applies for your piece, you can go directly to the Creative Commons page to choose. And then once you click deposit, you'll get a screen that will say that your item has been deposited into core. The first time that you deposit, we actually have somebody on our team that just reviews the metadata for every deposit, just to make sure that it is accurate with the document that was submitted. But then after about 3 days or so, it will be available to everyone. Before that 3 days, you can go to the deposit, but you may not be able to download it. The only other thing that I wanted to mention about core deposits are that they are permanent. So that is part of why we do have a review process, is that once you deposit something into core, we do not remove it. Only under very extenuating circumstances do we remove core deposits. But the great thing about core is that it's very well indexed. So if you want to make sure that people can find your work, then it is you can find it very quickly on Google and through other search engines. So it's a really great place to be able to find work. And then this also is just the page where all of the core deposits go that are deposited into Humanities Commons. So this is also a really great place to browse around and see what other people have published. So that is a very quick overview of the Commons, and I'm sure that you have some questions. And so before we kind of go back, I believe we're going into our Q&A next. I do want to just drop a few links in the chat of things that will kind of help you to get started as you're working through the Commons for the first time. So the first thing is our help and support website. And this is where you'll want to start if you have any questions for tech support. So this is, as I said, this is where all of our support pages are. So if you're trying to figure out how do I create a group or how do I deposit something to core, you'll want to start on this site. We have a lot of tutorials there that will hopefully help you through that process. The next thing that I'm going to drop in the chat is a link to our email. And this is our support inbox that if you are having trouble registering or have any really specific questions for us about anything related to the Commons, feel free to email. So that is available there. And then last but not least, this is our getting started guide. And this was created specifically for HASTAC scholars to get a very brief overview of what the Commons is and how it works. So this is kind of like your Spark Notes version of what is Humanities Commons and what is HASTAC Commons. So that is also a great place to get started for tutorials. All right, so that is all that I have today. So I'm going to pass it back to Sean and Hillary to let us keep going.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Larissa and Zoe. Zoe, I know Kathy asked you a question, but I see your cat is in the front of the screen. So, but before I pass it to you, Zoe, to answer that, I just wanted to remind folks that after you set up your profiles on Humanities Commons, that you have to click to add to join the HASTAC Scholars group. If there's any questions about that, we're happy to answer. But yeah, Zoe, you mentioned that everything that's posted to the core repository gets a DOI. Could you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. Kat is trying to join the conversation. It's, but I think I'm a better place to explain a DOI. So it's a digital object identifier, and it's a very kind of well-established way of creating versions of record. And okay, no, I'm just gonna have to. He's just gonna be silly if I leave him up here. So it creates an identifier and a link that means that you can share that link and it will always find its way back to your publication, and publication in the broader sense, because publishing is just making things public. So it's easy to keep track of and gives that kind of reliability, which when you're, citing things, like the internet is ephemeral, things change, but the idea is the DOI stays the same. And so it's something that we offer that's, it's very common for journals and books and things to do so. The doing it in this context means that we're kind of valorizing all sorts of publications in the same way. And so particularly, I think as early career researchers, when you're building up your portfolio of materials, it's another way to kind of add some, what's the word I'm looking for? Not quite authority, but a little bit of legitimacy, something. There are funny words around that don't quite fit. But yes, that's the idea between a DOI. So everything that goes into the repository gets one.
Thanks. Okay, so I think we can move into the Q&A section. And I just want to make sure we leave a couple minutes at the end before 4 p.m. to do some reminders. So I'm seeing one question in the chat from Michaela. I submitted 2 proposals to the conference, I'm assuming.
Yeah, to the conference, yeah.
Great. Hi. Okay, so I believe the leading conference coordinators are going to be sending out decisions in a couple weeks about the abstracts.
So, but I also applied as a HASTAC scholar for the HASTAC Scholar conference, or I'm not sure.
For the like HASTAC Scholars program?
Yes.
Okay.
So I applied as like HASTAC Scholar for the program, but also as simply as conference participants presenter for the conference.
Did you submit 2 different proposals or the same proposal?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's 2 different proposals.
Okay, so they'll be sending out decisions, I believe, in the next couple of weeks.
So yeah, I was just like confused about the work, not the workload, but basically the process. So for instance,
like
Like, let's say when one gets rejected, the other one gets accepted. When both of them get accepted, like what's the like?
Okay, I understand.
I was puzzled by the application. That's why I applied. Like,
yeah. So I think regardless of which, even if your proposal that you submitted not as a scholar, the fact that you are a HASTAC scholar, I think you can just assume that you submitted as a HASTAC scholar. Okay. So yeah, I think they'll probably just apply your HASTAC scholar status to both proposals, even though you submitted one not as. Yeah. Sorry, that was confusing.
No, you clarified. Thank you. You clarified it very well.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll just say, like, if you have submitted a proposal to the conference as a HASTAC scholar, we are definitely prioritizing HASTAC scholars sessions that you've proposed. So if that applies to anybody else in the audience, just know that it's definitely a priority for us to get all of you involved in the conference as much as possible.
Hillary, there was a question on the collaborative book discussion earlier. Can I just read it off to you?
Yeah, please.
It says, who decides what book to review and how many groups there are?
So we sort of decided as an administrative body to feature this book. And I think it's a few reasons. I think the topic is relevant. A lot of HASTAC scholars are also educators, instructors, using different methods to, bringing different methods to bear to make their classrooms more participatory. People have presented on that kind of work in Digital Fridays. And then also we have sort of a direct line to the author, and we'll be getting free copies of the book. So we decided to go with this book. It was just re-released, a new volume, or not new volume, edition was just released this year. So it seemed like a really good fit. Okay, any other questions, Sean?
There was a question about fellowship funds that I just asked the person to email me. But if you have any questions related to documentation of your fellowship, you can email me. I will put my email address in the chat one more time. And someone asked for your email to Hillary, so I can maybe add that too. Or maybe you should add it. I'm not sure which of your emails you prefer people reach you at.
Yeah. Sorry, did you say you're putting your email in the chat?
I am.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? You can either ask them in the chat, or if you raise your hand, maybe we can just call on you too, since we have a little bit of time. I'm seeing some questions about how many book reviews are done in a given year. Is it just the one? Yes, it's just this one book review for this year. Although that format may change in the future if there's a lot of interest in talking about more than one book. And then there was a question about how do we sign up for the book review. So to sign up for either the book review or any of the programs that we talked about today, so that's the book review, the Scholar Spotlight, or for Digital Fridays, we'll be sending a recap of today's orientation with links to sign up. So look for that in your email next week. But yes, any questions, you can either ask them in the chat or raise your hand and we can call it.
Searching, scrolling.
One of my colleagues just clarified something that I think maybe is important to share. So the way that the book review has been done before is that we will often invite scholars to review specific chapters. So there are also like multiple scholars have reviewed the same chapter before when we're doing the book review as well. This is just to share, to say that there is opportunity to participate in this, even if it feels like, oh, that there maybe isn't enough content to go around. There's plenty of content to go around. We can have more than one review for a chapter.
And I'll also say, I know some folks last spring felt sort of, you know, we all have a lot going on as students, as teachers, kind of crunched for time. And I'll just say, you know, I think it sort of was intimidating, like the schedule. It's just yet another thing that you have to do, but it's really a self-paced kind of thing. All of the like deadlines are really just benchmarks, goals. You don't necessarily have to stick to the timeline that's laid out. Really the goal is to write something, to share it with your peers, and to publish something by the end of the semester. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's really just an opportunity to practice. That's how I see it. So again, I think some people felt intimidated by the schedule. I certainly don't want it to feel like every other class that we've taken in graduate school. Okay. Right. Any other questions? I'm seeing a heart. Great.
Particularly for the, yeah, not making it feel like every other class.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing about HASTAC Scholars, like all of us here, Sean and I read all of your applications. Like there's a lot of just brilliance and wisdom and talent in this space. And so all of you have something really interesting to bring to the table. So yeah, I think we should treat each other like the serious scholars that we are. And you know, let's connect with each other. Like Zoe and Larissa said, the possibilities are endless as far as you know, starting projects, connecting, etc.
Yeah, and on that, Kathy has just prompted us to talk about how you all can create things according to your interests outside of the scholar space. So Larissa, I might get you to screen share again and show how to create a group. I will say, you know, one of the things about developing collaborations and things like that is they often start in a space where there are more folks around. So my guess is that HASTAC Scholars Group that you're going to be a part of will be a place where you can start throwing around ideas together and get some people on board, and then you can create something else. Just as a heads up, because it's very easy to set something up and hope people will find it. But if you put a bit of work into getting the people first, they often take off. So I'll, yeah, with that, ask Larissa to do the specifics of how to go about doing that.
Yeah, sure. So let me once again share my screen. And so as we already kind of looked at this groups area of the site, but we were looking down at our list of groups. If you go to the top of the page, you'll see there's a create a group button. And then when you click on that, this will take you through all the steps that you need to create a group, which is really very simple. So you'll start with your group name. So I'm just gonna type this in and write a short description. Then from there, this is where, then from there, you can set the privacy settings for the group. So I kind of mentioned this a minute ago when I did my presentation, but you can have public groups, you can have private groups, and you can have hidden groups. So obviously the point of a public group is to have a broader conversation. So we would definitely encourage you to set up a public group if you have something you really want to talk about with your peers. A private group, though, can also work, especially if it's something where maybe you want to have a conversation around a topic with a small group that you want to turn into a conference presentation or something a little bit more intimate than having everybody available to see it. Hidden groups are basically the same thing as private groups, but they are not at all able to be seen on HASTAC Commons. So sometimes this is used more, I would say, on an organization level when an org has a task force that they want to be using the Commons tools, but they don't want everybody in the org to be able to see it. So in general, I would say probably public or private groups would be what you'd be interested in. And then you can choose how you want to invite others to join. Do you want it to be open to anybody, or do you want to just have it be for certain people or certain admins? Then from there, when I hit next step, you can create a group site. And so I know I talked a little bit about WordPress sites, how you can create an individual site that could function as a portfolio or a blog or a project site. You can also do the same thing for groups. And so one example of this on the Commons that we've seen is like, there are certain groups that they will have their group area be where they have a discussion board going, but then they'll have a site be their forward facing element that they'll share with everybody, you know, saying like, hey, we're working on this project. These are the events we're holding or whatnot. And then from there, you can create that site. It's, as I said, it's also through WordPress. So it's very easy to customize it. And you can do this, or if you choose not to, that's also totally fine. And you can always turn on things later if you think you might use it and then you decide no, or vice versa. You can always do that. I'm going to go to the next step. And for that, I don't know why I keep getting this error message, but I've already mentioned group discussion boards. So that's one of the main features there. Docs is also a space where you can use to be able to share. You can have kind of a document editor going with the group. So it's not as, I will be honest and say it is not as well functioning as something like Google Docs, but we do have this available. So some groups have used this in the past to share things like meeting notes and whatnot with each other. I'm not going to go through the rest of these settings because these are just basically having a cover photo for your group, setting up an image. Then the final step is you can either just create the group and have it be on the Commons, or you can send invites to individual people. So if you have somebody you know you want to collaborate or that they might be interested in your topic, that would be how you do it. So as I said, very simple to set up groups. Once your group is set up, if it's public, it will be available to access right from this general area. And then the same thing goes with sites, as I mentioned as well, in that you can create a site that can then also be shared out. So lots of different ways that you can customize it. And as Kathy pointed out, it's definitely not just about HASTAC having your specific areas where you're working. You also can really make it whatever you want.
And I'll just add, we're also working on some kind of showcase materials to show some of the things that can be done. We have journals on Humanities Commons that are running really well. People use it for events, like I dropped into the chat. I've, had someone planning on using it for postdoc recruitment. There are all sorts of things just where you need a public presence and a way to talk to people. So that kind of documentation is always increasing on our side, and we're also over kind of the course of this year-ish going to be putting together more and more workshops that you will be able to attend as well. So going through something like more focused on digital presence, for example, is likely one of the next ones we'll do. So you'll hear about all of those as they come out.
So, and also I'm going to jump in. I got a private message from a user, but this is actually a great question. I'm sure some of you also have. And the question was, what is the difference between Humanities Commons and HASTAC Commons? So if I'm a member of HASTAC Commons, what is my connection with Humanities Commons? So basically, both of these, Humanities Commons is the broader network, and that encompasses all of our separate member orgs and institutional nodes and all of it. But as a HASTAC Commons member, you have access to all of the features also on Humanities Commons. So when you create your profile, you will automatically have a profile on Humanities Commons as well as on HASTAC Commons. It's the same profile. And the big thing that is kind of important to just understand is that you can also join any groups that are on Humanities Commons as well as any that are on HASTAC Commons. So if you go onto Humanities Commons and you see there's a group on, let's use art history again, art history, and you want to join that group, you can totally do that, even if you've just signed up through HASTAC Commons. So the relationship there is basically that these two things are interconnected. There's not going to be a moment when you're on our site and it's going to be like, oh, you're only in HASTAC Commons, so you can't do something on Humanities Commons. All of those features are totally open to you.
Thanks, Larissa and Zoe. So unless there are no more questions, I just want to put a pin in a couple things before we sign off. So the first is to register an account through HASTAC Commons. And then once you do that, create a profile. And once you do that, please join the HASTAC Scholars group and contribute to the discussion. Introduce yourself, and we'll get the connections going. Another reminder, please follow us on Twitter. HASTAC Scholars has a Twitter account. We also have a HASTAC account, which has not just HASTAC Scholars following them, but the whole HASTAC network. So that's also a great place to connect. And then I just wanted to say a couple more things about the conference, since I have a minute or two. So I put this in the chat, but just to say it here, there's actually been around 20 spots set aside for HASTAC Scholars to present, whether that's, presenting a session or presenting some artwork or presenting your work in some fashion. There are 20 slots set aside for all of you if you decide that you do want to participate as a presenter. And there's also going to be a sliding scale for registration. So students will definitely have a reduced rate in order to attend. And there will also be affordable housing options if you want to actually attend in person and need lodging. So some notes about the conference. Sean, do you have any other reminders?
That's all I had too. I guess I would say that two things. So if folks have announcements that they would like us to share out with the rest of the cohort, that you can also send them to Hillary and I, and we can send them on our listserv. I'm not sure if folks have capacity to share themselves on the listserv yet. I'll follow up on that. And the second is, we really care here at HASTAC about trying to create a space for folks to collaborate horizontally. So if there are other ways that scholars are interested in connecting with other members of your cohort, I'd love to talk to you more about that and support you in figuring out what that looks like. Whether that be, we've gotten some feedback in the past about scholars wanting more informal types of networking spaces, or trying to figure out ways to continue deeper conversations beyond, presentations that they might have done on a Digital Friday. So if there are ways that folks have to build with each other on a more horizontal level, that we are really trying to facilitate that space, that we are definitely not interested in creating a top-down model that we're deciding the book or the discussion topics for Digital Friday. So we're really trying to make this as collaborative a space for folks to participate in as possible. Wanted to thank everybody. This is a really large cohort, and I wish that I was able to hear more from y'all. It was really interesting to read everybody's applications, and looking forward to getting to know you over the next few years through your work. But yeah, if you don't have any further questions, look forward to seeing you in the various groups and on the H Commons site. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.
I want to end the recording.